And welcome to Back in the Dave, and I'm your host, David Knight. This episode is one that I've kind of been waiting for a minute because I'm going to premiere the video and the single release for my next release for this year, The Awakening. And there's a really long, which I'm going to try to condense down, backstory of how I came about with this song and how it all came to be. And it's kind of like what came first, the chicken or the egg. I don't really know, but I'm going to figure this out. And this should be a really cool episode. I'm going to try and keep it kind of short, as I'm trying to do these days, keep these episodes as short as I possibly can, but work as much goodness into the shortness as I possibly can. All right. So we're at the end of summer. We're in September, and this summer has been pretty good for me. I hope it's been good for you. I hope that you've been enjoying the summer, enjoying the heat, and enjoying the nice sunny days and the thunderstorms and the lightning, as I love the thunderstorms and lightning, as most people do not. My wife does not. My mom does not. I don't know about my daughter, but you know. So all is good in the night household. Some really cool things came about in terms of life change and family change and stuff. And I'll get to that stuff in another episode. This is really all about the awakening. I can say that my granddaughter Emery, the youngest, she is thriving. She's a big girl. She is chunky on the arms and chunky around the neck. I mean, she's just a big girl now. We are on the beginning of the 2024 election as well. We'll see how that goes. Who knows? It's wow. I have such an opinion on all of this stuff, and I'm going to put that stuff out in other ways because this episode is about the awakening. So I hope all's been doing good. I hope everybody's been doing good. I've been doing fine. It's been good to take this time off and just to kind of enjoy and just release more and more stress. The anxiety and the PTSD is still with me. It has come down tremendously, though there have been relapses, which is normal to the healing process. You take one step forward and 2 or 3 steps back, and you can hear it in my voice now. I got so much pressure coming up through my stomach, and it's really something. But I am really happy to say that it's healing. It's getting better. I'm feeling better. The relapses come, I deal with them, and I move forward and that kind of stuff. But all I really want to say about that is this. Whatever you are going through mentally, emotionally, spiritually, energetically, deal with it. Hopefully you're aware of it. And if you are one of the fortunate people that I will say that's aware of it, I highly suggest doing something about it before it gets out of hand. I had no clue because my stuff hit me as a child, and so it was all normal to me. I had no clue that I was suppressing, compressing, and pushing down my feelings and my emotions to the point where my cup of emotions and anger and stuff runneth over and triggered my nervous system into protecting me. And the way it's protecting me is through panic, PTSD, anxiety, stress, stuff like that. Other people, it could be chronic pain. So if you're in chronic pain, I'm here to tell you, it's not your physical body. If the doctor says, no, there's nothing wrong, everything's fine, or even if the doctor says with x-rays and stuff, well, you have this, this, no. It ain't that. So I'm going to say in the spirit of time, you've been warned. You've been told, like, deal with this stuff. It's for real, for real. All right, let's move on to the awakening. The awakening has been something coming up in me, I'm going to say, since childhood. I'm going to take it back there, but the actual song itself didn't really come to be until 2017. But what has happened is that everything in my life, I'm going to say from 1968 to 2017, has put me in this whole mode of what the awakening has actually come to be. And I think the awakening at this point, while I like the song a lot, I think you guys are going to love it as well. And I'm going to play it. I'm kind of leery as to whether I should play at the beginning or the end of the episode. I think I'm going to do it somewhere maybe in the middle towards the end of the episode, do the actual premiere. Then I'm going to make the podcast, folks, wait a minute. I want you to hear the whole thing. All right. So I'm going to do it towards the end here, the video premiere for it, as well as the song. Okay. I kind of want to give you what came first, chicken or the egg. I'm going to say in this scenario, the egg. The egg hatched and it became a chicken some 50 some odd years later. All right. So I'm going to try and make it short and sweet. I know that's difficult for me, but I'm going to try and make this bad boy a little short and sweet here. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll get more video stuff. I'm going to play some little bit of piano. I'm going to play a little bit of drums because that's going to help me tell the story of the awakening and the bigger story of me and orchestration. Okay, so how does this begin? Let's jump on over and let me jump in and tell you how all this came to be. All right, here we go. All right, so I'm going to go back to like 1968. Yeah, 1968, 69, but really 1968. It goes back further than that. It really goes back into the 1950s, but I wasn't born then, but my mom was. And in the 1950s, my mom was a teenager. She was born in 1940, so by 1950, she was 11. By 1957, she was 17, 18 in high school. But at this time, she began studying how to sing. And she began taking lessons from an opera singer, I believe, in high school. My mother came a very strong, very profound, and quite frankly, just a freaking awesome opera singer. But to me, Anthony, Mark, and Chris, by the time we came along in the early and mid 60s, she was already doing her thing with her music, no different than me. By the time Rhea came along, and Kyle came along, and Colin, and now Marcus, by the time my 4 kids came along, I was already way into my music. I owned my studio. I had done productions and mixes and all kinds of film, just a bunch of stuff. I mean, my band was together, a lot of stuff, and my mom was no different. So I guess this is a real classic, what am I looking for? A classic, example of the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. My mom is the tree and I'm the apple. Same thing with my life. I'm the tree and my son Kyle is the apple, and he's out there doing really cool things in his music right now. So proud of this young man. But going back to my mom, so by the time I came along, and by the time I turned 6, 7 years old, 1968, 1969, my mother was performing live as an opera singer and an actress. She had got this part in a play by a gentleman by the name of Irving Bergey. Irving Bergey was a songwriter and producer, but from the calypso side. Now my mom's side of the family, my grandmother, more specifically her mom, is from Barbados. So it was a heavy calypso area and all that kind of stuff back in those days that I grew up on that side. I mean, my side of the family, my side, the Knight side and the Dewey side. My mom is a Dewey, my dad is a Knight, obviously. And my mom's side was from the Caribbean, from Barbados. All my grandmother and her siblings were all from Barbados, okay? So they all had the Bajan accent, the whole thing going on with that, okay? But along with that came calypso music. And Irving Bergey was a songwriter and producer of calypso music. And one of the artists that he wrote music for was Harry Belafonte, okay? And that was one of his big claims to fame, along with this play that he did at the time that we call Ballad Carib, but the actual name of the play was called Ballad for Bimcher. I don't know what the hell Bimcher means. I guess I need to ask my mom. I don't know. But that was the name of the play. My mom was had the lead role in the play, and the character's name was Daphne Byfield. Okay, really kind of funny story here. Let me make some other connections here. Okay, this is where Dave starts going off and making these episodes longer. But I can't help it because these are just really little tidbits of how life brings all these type of cool things together. Okay, so she played the role of Daphne Byfield. Little did I know that later on in my life, I would meet two brothers in high school, John and Vincent Byfield. And along with Clayton Gittins, we put together a band called MU1, which to me was a basement garage band. It was the first band the four of us ever played in at that point. Unfortunately, as many of you know already, Clayton passed away in 2020, and John passed away, I think, in 2024, 2023, very young in his 40s. So now it's just me and Vincent, the bass player, and Vincent Byfield, the drummer. But it's kind of interesting that my mother played the character of Daphne Byfield, and I went on to meet two gentlemen, Vincent and John Byfield, all the same last name. Makes you go, coinky dink, maybe. All right. So that's one thing. Another thing that happened with this play, my mom being in the play was like the second iteration of the play. There was one that was an original, the first version of it that happened obviously before my mother got involved with it. Another interesting story happened there. The lead singer who played the role of Daphne Byfield before my mom got the role, she was the mother of a friend of mine that I met in ninth grade, this young lady by the name of Charisse. And we kind of dated a little bit, I guess what you're going to call it, in high school in ninth grade back at that time. But Charisse, what's interesting about Charisse is that she knew I was into music. She was getting into music as well. We were both 14 years old in 1976, right? And her uncle was doing production work. He was doing television commercials. And for those who remember at that time, there was this chicken called Paramount Chicken. And he was doing the commercial for Paramount Chicken. And Charisse comes to school one day, hey, you want to do vocals in a commercial? And my uncle's doing like, yeah, okay, no problem, let's do it. And we did the commercial. That sparked Charisse's career as a singer. She's now such a beautiful singer, such a rich, thick, beautiful voice. I love Charisse's voice. I don't think I've ever told her that. We have not been in touch for all these years. We just reconnected maybe about 2 or 3 years ago. I think during the pandemic, we reconnected. I happened to come across her YouTube page and we said, hey, Charisse, do you remember me? You know, so that was interesting because Charisse's mom played the part of Daphne Byfield in Ballad for Bimsha before my mom got the part. Okay, and then Charisse and I met later. And how did I know? Is because back in ninth grade when her and I were dating, I went to her apartment one day. We were hanging out just for lunch one day, went to her apartment, and I had a really bad habit back in those days of going through people's album collections, right? Because my theory was, if I see your album collection, I kind of have a good idea of your character and personality and who you are and what you're into, right? I didn't know it at that time, but that's what I was actually doing. And also going through the album collection, see what they had in their albums. I can make cassette recordings of them and stuff like that, okay? As I'm going through the album collection at Charisse's house, I come across the same album as we have at our home, the album for the play, the original soundtrack recording for the play. And I was like, hey, Charisse, like, how do you have this? Like, I have this same album. My mom plays Daphne Byfield in this play 2 or 3 years ago when she was doing the play for all those years. She goes, oh, wow, my mom played the same role in that play as well, and that's how we met. So, I mean, huge universe, huge world, but look how energy brings everything together once you're in that motion. Okay, so let me get back. So my mom was like this real kick-ass opera singer, right? I mean, it was the type of thing where Irving Berger would be in a house. I'd wake up at 10 o'clock. We would go to bed. My mom put us to bed early to get our asses out of her face. She put us to bed early, right? And then Irving Berger and a piano player, and I think sometimes a drummer or whatever would come over, and they would be in the living room rehearsing songs for the play, which would wake me up because this was the time in my life when the radio in my head would go off and I would start hearing drum beats and I would start hearing bass lines and melodies and all kind of stuff in my head at 6, 7 years old. And so I'd wake up and I'd go in there and I see my mother rehearsing with the piano player, with Irving Berger, going over the songs and stuff for the play, going over scales, all those type of things. Now to me this was nothing because this was like, this is what mommy does. Like it's like being born blind. Like you don't know. It's like this. It's like a normal thing, right? It's like not a big deal. But not knowing how these things were influencing my life, and how these things influenced my life straight up until the awakening. And that's the whole point of giving some of this backstory. So I'd wake up in the morning, or whenever my mother took a shower, she would take a shower and she'd vocalize. So we hear her doing her scales, la 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 la, all of this stuff, in the shower in the morning as she's getting herself together. Always practicing, always vocalizing, all of that kind of stuff, right? Again, for the four of us, for Anthony, me, Mark, and Chris, it was a normal, natural thing, not a big deal. When we got together at family get-togethers, my mother always sang Danny Boy, God Bless the Child, all these songs she would just sing at family get-togethers or whatever. We always went to the shows. We were always back behind stage. We were always on the tour buses or in the car, going to a rehearsal at the different theaters, a theater in Brooklyn, a theater over here, a theater over here, a theater in Manhattan. And then she began touring and took the plane, I think, down to Barbados and I think Puerto Rico and other venues and stuff like that, just always doing her thing. So if you hear me getting hoarse, if you hear me clearing my throat, that's the lovely PTSD hitting me now, which I don't care. I'm going to move through and tell my nervous system I'm okay, get over it. We're just filming and recording a damn podcast, all right? Let's move forward. So she's doing all of this stuff, right? And all these things that influence me, because remember, this happened between the ages of 6 and 13. 13 is when my mom decided to stop doing her music, which really impacted me to make a decision to go into music the year later. In 1975, she chose to stop doing music. That impacted me to start doing music in 1976 after my brother was killed. Okay? And I made a promise to myself that no matter what happens in my life, I'm never, ever giving my music up. And here I am now at age 62, 6'2", as of last month, August 18th. Happy birthday to me, right? I kept it going. But my mom chose to stop doing music in 1975 because she had 4 kids and she had to work things out, and things between her and my dad wasn't going good. And so it just wasn't the best time financially, mentally, emotionally for her to keep on doing her music. And if you listen to a podcast, Mother's Day podcast I did about 4 or 5 years ago, she did the podcast with me and we talked about all that stuff at the time, in her life at the time. Okay, so we're growing up behind stage and I am watching my mom on stage perform in front of hundreds of people in a theater, acting as an actress and singing and just dominating the stage with this role of Daphne Byfield in this play. But what was more intriguing to me, more so than my mom, was the orchestra pit. Because in the orchestra pit, there was the bass, there was a drummer, guitar player, timpani player, violins, violas, horns, saxophones, trombones, a full string section, like this whole orchestra. And my mom is like singing with all these other 30 or 40 piece orchestra in the orchestra pit. Now, of course, as the children of the lead in the role, we had like front row orchestra type seats. So I was able to lean over and look into the orchestra pit. And what was real cool was during her rehearsals, I would lean over and just be staring for the most part at the drummer, because that was my biggest interest before bass. As I said in other episodes, my interest was drums. Drums was my first instrument. And I was always looking at the drummer, and the drummer didn't pay any attention to the bass player, but the drummer and then the strings, the cellos, the violas, the violins. And when I would hear my mother rehearsing and singing on top of those strings and the drums and this whole big lavish bed of music, I was like, well, isn't that special? Cool. I can make it a whole big thing right now, but to me it was just like, wow. Like I could not articulate at that time how it felt to me. And to be honest, I can't even articulate now how it felt to me at that time, because it was just so in my face, at number one. And at the same time, my little brother Mark was always bugging me at the time. David, let's go over here and play with this. David, there's another interesting story. During that play, there was another guy, another kid around the same age as me and my siblings, running around. We're playing at the same time too. And I asked this kid, and I was having a good time with this kid, playing with this kid, having a good time with him. I said, hey kid, what's your name? He said, my name is David. I was like, oh, my name is David too. I said, what's your last name? He said, Knight. I was like, that's not true. That's my last name. He goes, no, my last name is Knight. My name is David Knight. I said, well, my name is David Knight. No, it's not. Yes, it is. Me and this dude had the same letters, the same name, the same name. Unless he pulls some big okey doke that I don't know about right now, me and this guy had the same exact name. Unless he found out my last name and was playing with me or whatever, I don't know. But as far as I know, we had the same last name. Anyhow, let me move on. Maybe it's kind of cool for Cocoa Puffs. I don't know, but we'll see. So that was my mom's thing. So what I want to do right now, I'm going to play a little segment of my mom singing at the play. Now, but this is just with her vocals and piano. This is not the string. This is one of the songs that was just her and the pianist playing. But I want you to hear my mom's voice for those of you who have not heard the episode that I did for Mother's Day 4 or 5 years ago. To me, this is kind of a really special treat because I don't hear my mom singing as much now as I did growing up and over the years. She's now 84. She will be 85 in April. To talk to her, to look at her, to see her energy, you would think she's like 72, 73, maybe 69, 70, somewhere in that ballpark. It's pretty incredible how young she looks and how youthful she feels. Her energy just feels youthful and stuff like that, right? So let's cut over to that. Ma, take it away. Love your voice. Here we go. Okay, that's my mom. That's her voice. That is a recording that a good friend of hers recorded during one of the performances of the play, and that was on an old cassette tape that I found that was in my dad's drawer years ago. Now that was actually recorded because on the cassette tape it says 1969, and if I can find the picture for those who are watching, if I can find, well, I can find the cassette tape should be in my my ice chest with all the rest of my cassettes. So I'll look for the cassette tape, and if I can find it, I'll take a picture of the cassette and put it up on the screen so those folks who are on YouTube watching this, you can actually see the cassette. It says 1969. 1969 when that was recorded. Unbelievable. Like, what was that? 59, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 57 years ago. Yeah, 57 years ago. In 1969, my mom was 29 years old in 1969. I was 7. I turned 7 that year. She turned 29 in April of 1969. So depending on when that was recorded, she could have been 28 or she could have been 29, depending on when it was recorded before or after April. Anywho, let's move ahead. So what I noticed is that when I began writing songs in the late 70s, because of Lionel Richie's influence in Motown and stuff like that. I began writing songs like in 1977, 78, and really began getting more and more into it in 1979. And I have all of my old cassettes of me attempting to write songs and all that kind of stuff. But the one thing I noticed was that whenever I tried to write a song and record a song, I always heard an orchestra. I always heard strings and violins and a brass section and horns and all of this stuff, and wanting to do it that way because that's what I grew up hearing and seeing and observing as a child behind the stage with a mom who was an actress and a singer. It was difficult because in the mid late 70s and the early 80s, the only way to really get an orchestrated sound was to hire an orchestra. And when I started getting really deep into songwriting, let's say not really deep, but recording my stuff with my band Chase and everything else, when I really began doing that, we're talking, this is like now 1981, 1982, and sampling is just kind of beginning. You had this synthesizer called the Mirage, and it had a sampler in it. It was a sampler. And what, for those who may not know, sampling is actually what this does. You take a microphone, you put the microphone to the instrument or to the source that you want to record. So let's say if you want to record a violin, no, let's make it simple. If you want to record a timpani drum, a big timpani drum, you get the microphone, put it on the mic stand, you point the microphone at the timpani drum, and you give it different angles. You put it underneath the timpani drum, you put it on top, you put it in the room, you put it way up above, you put multiple microphones around this instrument. And then you get a timpani drummer, a drummer who plays timpani, okay, and you record the timpani drum, boom, boom, and then you record that, and that recording is called a sample. Once you have that sample, you can then take that sample and put it into a keyboard like this, a synthesizer keyboard like this, right? And then you can play that sample. And then you have that sound. You can now play that sample into your computer, into your recording system, into your computer. And by doing that, you now have a timpani drum in your song. That was very, very intriguing to me when I first heard a sample in Sam Ash Music Store in, I think, 1983, 1984. I walked in the store and I heard somebody going, hit me, ow, hit me. It was like James Brown. And I'm like, how the hell did they do that? How did they get this thing of James Brown? I thought there was a DJ in there with two turntables just mixing James Brown. Hit me, back and forth, doing that. But when I went to the back of the store, this was in Hempstead, the Hempstead store on Long Island. When I went to the back of the store, there was no DJ, there was no turntables, there was no mixer, just this keyboard. And every time you hit the key on the keyboard, it played a sample like this.
The awakening.
The awakening. You see? Like that. And that's called sampling. So in the early 80s, you could only do like an 8-bit sample, which was very jagged and very distorted and very harsh sounding. So I would rent, because I couldn't afford it, I would rent this sampler called the Mirage, and it had a bunch of libraries on it. Violins, cellos, brass sections, all this kind of stuff, all these different samples of these string libraries and orchestras on it, and I would go and begin to orchestrate a song. But it really quite wasn't there because it sounded so scratchy and so degraded. You knew it wasn't a real orchestra. It didn't have a real violin string sound. It sounded, even though it was a sample of that instrument, it still sounded more synthesizer, more generic, more GMO, more fake than what a real timpani drum or what a real sampled violin would actually sound like. But I used it anyway to the best of my ability. And with that, I rented that Mirage, and I tried to orchestrate a song I wrote in 1985 called Visions. So let's take a listen to Visions right quick, and it'll give you a real good idea of how an orchestra library sounded back in the mid to late 80s, like 1985, 86, 1987. All right, so here's Visions. This is one of my favorite songs that I've written. I'll play a good piece of it because I really want you to hear what I tried to do with orchestration. But I'm going to re-record this song now in the right way. All right, here we go, Visions. Okay, so that's visions. So that gives you a really good idea of what an orchestrated sample library sounded like back between 1985 and 1987. It was like only 8-bit, maybe 12-bit fidelity, quality of sound. You can hear the graininess, and you can hear the graininess, you can hear the scratching sounds. So it doesn't really have a violin, cello, viola sound and it sounds tight. It sounds, and much of the music back at that time sounded the same way, very sterile, very tight, very, harsh, and ones and zeros, which is digital, ones and zeros. Okay, um, but what had happened is that as time went on, as computers got more powerful, as hard drives got bigger, okay, because sampling an instrument takes up a lot of hard drive space. I have sample libraries in the studio that are 230 gigabytes, and that's not even the biggest one. Okay, some of them like 500 gigs, and which is half a terabyte. But you need that kind of hard drive space in order to be able to recreate the sound and have to have the instrument sound authentic. And that was the issue back in the day. Computer speed wouldn't let you do it. Hard drive space wouldn't let you do it. You couldn't even record really audio on a hard drive back in those days. They were just too slow. They didn't spin fast enough. But now, if you look at that box again, those of you who are on YouTube can see this box here. This right here, this PC right here, this is nothing but a server. So that has nothing but hard drive space in it for all of my libraries, so that I can get all the more authentic libraries to make everything sound real, to make all the instruments sound authentic. And all that server does is push my libraries out to my main workstation over here, which is a Mac computer. Okay, the server is a PC, and I have a Mac workstation that does all the recordings, everything for me. And the server pushes all of the sounds of the library out to the Mac, and then the Mac can record it in the song. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is give you a little quick sample of my library to hear how authentic songs sound now, and how authentic drums and stuff sound now when you actually go to do it in a song these days. All right, so I've dropped down to my lovely desk here, and okay, so this here is called orchestral tools. And orchestral tools it's a sampling company, library orchestra sample company in Berlin, Germany. And this company has literally sampled the Berlin Orchestra. So when I say to people, I have the Berlin Orchestra in my studio, like, it's for real. Here's a sample of it. Not like hitting the wrong chord, right? That just makes the brain go wah like that, right? But listen to these higher notes. You get to hear the vibrato that the musician is playing. And you have things called articulations, and articulations allow you to record how the musician actually played the instrument. Vibrato, tremolo, pizzicato, whatever it may be. You hear those things. And so when you go to orchestrate, though this might sound thin, when you take that sound, or when you take this sound, and you double it 2 and 3 times in your recording, I'll say your tape recorder, okay, your recording equipment, it begins to become big and large and sound like a full orchestra. And so that excited me. That really, that really excited me because I could now real warm. You hear? Listen to that. I can make it swell. You see, so sampling now has come a really long way, right? It's come a real long way. The string, it makes an orchestra sound like really real, like just very authentic. And so with that, like I said, that interests me a lot as string libraries, as independent companies, not the big manufacturer, but as the independent boutique sampling companies began making these big lavish samples. As technology got better and better, my effort to orchestrate my songs based upon me growing up backstage with my mom, I had been working on it my entire career, right? Trying to make my ballads and my songs have a big, full sounding orchestra around it. And it was a struggle because the technology wasn't there. And let's be frank, I am not an orchestrator. I'm not a classically trained musician. Hell, I'm not a trained musician on any level. I'm not a trained jazz musician. I'm not a trained country western musician, folk musician, self-taught dude that plays funk and likes it and enjoys it. And that's what it boils down to. So, but I will, coming in the future, I will be taking orchestration courses and composition and all that kind of stuff. So right now I'm just winging it. And that's what the awakening is. The awakening is literally me winging it based upon my influences, growing up backstage with my mom, and my influences listening to soul music and R&B and Motown and all that stuff, a fifth of Beethoven, and of course, Barry White. Barry White, when I heard Barry White's Love Theme in the early, I think like 1972, 73, somewhere around there, when I heard that, and I heard that, I was like, oh, what? You know, that really influenced me. And you'll hear Barry White influence when I play The Awakening shortly. You're going to hear that influence, all right? So how did it all start with The Awakening? Well, now that I had all these libraries, in 2017, I had bought the Orchestral Tools Berlin Orchestra Sample Library, and I needed a way to test it out to see how authentic it may have been. But along with that, I bought this other, and I keep looking over here because I have it on my server screen. The server behind me I pointed out earlier, there's a screen for it over here. And I'm looking at the screen. I love that server. It's like so, my studio is so high tech now. I just sit here, I just get giddy with excitement. I mean, I just really do. So if you catch me looking over here, I'm looking at my server, I'm looking at my workstation or whatever, you know, and the stuff on my desk is just really a beautiful thing. So I bought this other program in 2017 as well. And it's a drum program. I was looking for, in 2017, I got really deep into high-end audio effects. And I know I'm getting kind of techie here. I don't want to get too techie. I got into high-end audio effects, reverb systems, delays, echoes. Those are audio effects, phasing, stuff like that, right? So when you hear something go, filters and phasing, that's what's doing all that kind of stuff. Filters and phasing, cross-phasing, right? In 2017, prior to 2017, I was using all the instruments and libraries and audio effects in my recording system, and they're good. But when I got turned on to the really high-end and very freaking expensive boutique, small companies that made big sample libraries. And I listened to them in January 2017. I was like, oh my God. You had companies out there sampling and recreating some of the more iconic synthesizers like the synclavier, which Michael Jackson used at the beginning of Beat It. So this is the beginning of Beat It, and you hear that whole drum, all that stuff going on at the beginning of Beat It. That's a synthesizer, a $250,000 synthesizer called the synclavier. Well, this company called Arturia sampled the synclavier. And that sound is in there along with a whole bunch of other sounds that Stevie Wonder used and Michael Jackson used and Prince and all these other artists use. It's an iconic synthesizer. But these companies, these little small boutique companies went back and sampled all these iconic, for lack of a better word, synthesizers and instruments over the past 50, 60 years. 70, 80 years, to be quite frankly. Some of these instruments that they sample go back to the 1800s. So I say a couple of hundred years. They are the harpsichord. I mean, it's that insane. But these libraries cost upwards of $400, $500 and more. Trust me, black man ain't got no money now. Anybody want to help, brother? Anyway, and so when I got into purchasing these libraries in 2017, I was blown away by the authenticity of the instrumentation. I was like, wow, I like them words. The authenticity of the instrumentation. I sound very educated. Let me stop. But they sounded so authentic. I mean, again, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and as a musician, I was around a lot of the synthesizers of that time. The Chroma Polaris, I'm talking Chinese to all y'all. I know the Chroma Polaris, the Synclavier, the Fairlight, you know, the Prophet 5, which is a big one, the Oberheim, the Linn drum machine. I mean, these, when you go back and listen to music, the Roland R8 drum machine, boom, 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 those were all iconic instruments that made hip hop and the music of the 80s what it was. And I own all those things in the software version because all these small boutique companies went and got those machines and sampled them to the most pristine way that they can be sampled. And I think I might do an episode on this because it's really cool and it's really fun to listen to. But anyway, so I went back and I purchased Orchestral Tools Berlin Orchestra, which is a several $1,000 purchase. But it was worth it, right? And so I wanted to test a song with it. And at the same time, I purchased this other software. It's a drum program called Apocalypse. I had to look over here. I forgot the name of it. Apocalypse drums. And these drums had big, giant sounds. So let me play it for you right quick. Check this out. Let me go to the drum set. I'm going to walk over there. Go to the drum set. Hang on. Walk to the drum set now. And I'm going to sit behind my drum set over here. You folks on YouTube are having a good time watching all this, right? They put the headphones on. Let me say my broke. I got to buy a new pair of headphones over here. Okay. So this is the sample drums that sparked the recording for The Awakening. So let's do this. Well, let's do that again because I forgot to cue that sound up. So I'm hitting the drums and it's playing the violins. That's how cool technology is, right? So let me come back over here, hang on, and switch this up for folks. Get my camera views and stuff right up in this piece. And let's switch it over to the drums. Make sure it sounds where it's supposed to sound. I don't know, do I leave this stuff in? Do I leave this stuff in? Or do I edit all this out? Let's see, I don't know. Let's go back over to the drums. I might leave it in because it's kind of fun. All right, so now we should have it. So this is Apocalypse drums. And these are the sounds that inspired me to do The Awakening, these drum sounds. It has all kinds of big percussion drum sounds. And the harder you hit them, the more the sound changes. Right? So that started it all. The purchase, we come back over to the main camera. Hang on, folks. Heading back over. Okay, so the purchase of the Berlin Orchestra, Orchestral Tools Berlin Orchestra, and the purchase of that drum sound in 2017, I was like, wow, okay, I can now do an orchestration. I can do, in my mind, I was like, I can do a classical song. Let me do a classical song now. And let me go back to my youth, right? And do a classical piece. Well, Dave, you're not a classical musician. I didn't care. I hear it in my head and I get it out the best way I can. And quite often, you know, there may be things wrong. There may be notes that might clash or whatever. I don't know. I work it out as I go. And then once the song is done and it all sounds good and clean to me, it may not be a classical song like John Williams' Star Wars and that kind of stuff and Beethoven's Fifth, all that kind of stuff. But I'm not those people. I can't do that. And as things go along more and more in my career, I'll get better educated and I'll do more things. But the awakening, why it's so important to me, is because it's the first one. The awakening allowed me to dip my feet in the water of classical music and orchestration with this library, Orchestral Tools Library, and the Apocalypse drums, and try something. So I sat down one day, I think it was in February of 2017 after buying these softwares, between February, March, and April of that year, and began recording it. And it started out just with those drums. Doom, 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 doom. And that's how it began. But it began as a more classical piece. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to move over and let's listen to the original recording of The Awakening as it was in 2017, the classical piece. So check it out, The Awakening. okay, that's my first attempt to record something that sounded like an orchestra, that sounded classical, that sounded big, and it had that feel of strings and lush strings and moving forward and big drums. And I didn't even finish the song. That song is, I mean, you can tell because the drums, the big drums, the big timpani drums. I think I used temp drums on it. Ethnic ensemble, ethnic drums is what the company calls them. Okay, so I use ensemble ethnic drums. Ethnic. That's the word I don't like, ethnic. I don't like the word ethnic, and I don't like the word indigenous people. Maybe I'll write about that and put it in an email. For those who are on my list, you'll know why, but I don't like those two words. So anyway, I don't like the term black or white either. I'm not black. White people aren't white. Indigenous people aren't indigenous. And ethnic people aren't ethnic. I hate all that stuff. Anyway, let me come back to my damn song before I get pissed off up in this piece. Anyway, so I used those drums, and that's what came out, that boom, boom, boom. That's what came out, right? And then the strings and the melody. And I just tried to use every synthesizer that had a cool sound, things moving back and forth, and all this movement within the song, and the drums being panned and sounds being panned, and then the strings and the harmony, all that kind of stuff. And I just tried to really make what I was hoping would be a classical piece. Now, to me, it fell short, and I still haven't achieved that goal. But the awakening was that first step for me. That version of the song was the first step. But then something happened a few years later. In 2019, I did that. What you just heard was a rough mix. You can tell because the drums in the beginning, the drums are just way out front in the entire song, which at this point I can't even think about because I mistakenly deleted the whole session. So I can't even go back and change it. I don't think I can change this. I find an old session of it. I don't know. We'll see. Anywho, it was the beginning of everything for me. But what ended up happening is a couple of years later, in late 2019, I was sitting here playing my bass and playing The Awakening. Now, I kept hearing The Awakening done differently. I kept hearing The Awakening being done as a dance tune, you know, something that you can dance to, like Barry White's Love Theme. This is when Barry White's influence kicked in big time, and also Walter Murphy with the Big Apple Band, A Fifth of Beethoven. That's when those songs of the early 70s who did stuff like this, who did instrumentals like this, began to kick in. And I started hearing doom, 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 doom on my bass. And I was like, I wonder if I can take this so-called wannabe classical song and turn it into a so-called wannabe Barry White ripoff type of sounding dance song. And so in late 2019, early 2020, I wanted to do it live. And I got two musicians together with me, a keyboard player and a drummer. And we came in here and began, I gave them my idea. I gave them some demo stuff that I was doing, trying to kind of get it together and try to make the changes. And you know what? Let me play a little demo right now. I'm just going to play a little excerpt of that demo where I began hearing the change. So let's go to that right quick. Here we go. Little demo. Play it now. Go. Okay, so you hear, that's the demo. I sped it up a little bit. I put the bass line in, and I gave that little demo to the keyboard player, and the keyboard player, Paul, and the drummer, I don't remember his name because we had just met, and I don't remember his name. Well, there you go. All right, so the drummer. And we sat in here like in January of 2020 after I had put the new desk. 2020 was a big year for me because I was changing a whole bunch of stuff around. But anyway, we sat in here and we put things together and we began recording it. But it was a struggle and it wasn't working out. And then what happened, as we all know, COVID hit. So when COVID hit, the drummer couldn't come over anymore. The keyboard player couldn't come over anymore. So I was left once again here in the studio trying to figure this out. How can I get this new version of The Awakening done in my head and turn this into a dance song? And I began working on it and working on it and working on it and working on it until finally I got it. And it was a lot of stuff because I went to put in a section in it, this whole big break section, this whole big brass. I went to put all this stuff in a more dramatic piece in there and stuff just to kind of take it away from what I attempted to do with the classical version of it and all of this stuff, right? And I think it came out pretty damn good, okay? Taking the strings and speeding it up and making the strings sound better. I tried speeding up the original string parts that I had in the classical piece of it. That didn't work, so I ended up having to record all the strings. I ended up having to record the entire song all over again from scratch, literally. I thought I was going to be able to salvage the old version, the original version of the song, the classical piece that I just played for you guys. I thought I was going to be able to salvage that, excuse me, and just put a drum beat behind it, play drums on it, you know, and carry on. But it didn't work. I had to literally start from scratch with everything. Bass, drums. Only thing I had, that's another part. On the version I'm about to play, this final version that we're releasing today, the only part of this song that I did not play on is the guitar part. So when you hear the guitar parts, that's my cousin Randy from my band Chase playing the guitar parts. I asked him to come and play guitar for me. I got you covered, Dave. Don't worry about it. So he did it for me. I was very grateful. And once again, thank you, Randy. I appreciate it. But everything else you're going to hear on this version of The Awakening, I played. Drums, bass, strings, arrangement. So if you like it, yay, I did it. I played it. It sounds great. If it sucks, I suck. And it sounds horrible. But let's go over to it. Let me introduce it. Here's the video. And before I go there, the video is kind of cool because how could I forget this? See, I'm getting a little pissed with this episode now, but that's fine because this is what I do. Because so much stuff be going through, my head, right? All these things in my head, messing around with my head. But let's do the video too. Let's premiere the video now, as well as the song. The video I did a little different. Kind of sort of not really, because I'm like, what do I want to do for this video? I'm like, I don't know. And I said, well, it's an instrumental. There's no lyrics, let's just put together something kind of visually pleasing, visually pleasant. And so I got a whole bunch of videos from this gentleman who records high definition video, and he goes around the world just shooting all this high definition video and stuff. And I grabbed a bunch of his shots along with my shots out in the street and out in the world doing stuff, along with me playing drums and bass here in the studio up against the song and having fun with that, and put together this montage video that I think came out pretty good, that I like a lot. It's visually pleasing with all the different things, and it flows with the strings of the song and the orchestral part of the song, but as well as the funk. Me playing the drums and the bass keeps the funk. So it's a really cool video. We're going to premiere that as soon as I can shut my mouth, along with the song release. As soon as I can shut my mouth and switch over to it. So here we go. The premiere of the video and the single of the video as well. The Awakening. I hope you enjoy. Here we go. Okay, folks, that's it. That's The Awakening. The video and the song. I hope you love it. I'm sorry to make you wait the whole episode. Maybe you skipped and went ahead and listened and watched ahead of time and then came back and did the whole thing. Fine. I was really debating with myself, what do I do? Do I premiere the video and play the song at the top of this thing? Or do I give and I said, you know what? Do this in time order. Like 19, and I did that because that's what a podcast to me is about. It's about the story. And even though this is a premiere of the video and a release of the video, what's more important is that this is the story of how the awakening came about in the back end. So I felt because of the medium that I put this on, which is the podcast, I went ahead and did all the story first and the background stuff, and then put the end results at the end of it. So I hope you appreciate it. But that's the awakening. You hear the differences. I mean, how can you not? It's much faster. The drums is funk. That bass line, doom, 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 doom. The bass line is killing. It's danceable. The strings are just soaring. That horn blast. That I was like, oh my God. When I played that part, I was like, whoa! I had never played that before. Something like that on a horn, on a trumpet, on a muted trumpet. You know, the snare drum just whipping in between. You know, the horn part. I mean, playing all that felt so good to me, and it translated so well in the recording. And let's be clear, this is not, a real, like what Barry White did and what Walter Murphy and the Big Apple Band, what they did with the Fifth of Beethoven. That was really, real cool, high end. I'm not there yet. But I hope that I did a good enough job with this that it inspires you to download it, to grab a copy of it for yourself, to enjoy the video, and to keep me and what I'm doing on your radar. Because clearly, The Awakening is only the beginning. And I think the title of this song is appropriate because The Awakening has awakened me. And even though The Awakening is really about us human beings waking up, which going back to the beginning of the podcast episode, when I think about the election, when I think about Donald Trump, and I think about Kamala Harris and what's going on in this country and what's going on around the world, what's going on in Africa, human beings are waking up, and all of the atrocities that have happened over the past 532 years, and all the stuff that has been going on is coming to an end because people are waking up and they don't want it anymore. And we'll see what happens with the election. I don't know who's for who's for Trump and who's for Kamala. To me, in an oligarchy, it kind of doesn't matter at the end of the day, but it matters if Trump does what he wants to do. That's kind of crazy. If Kamala does what everybody's saying that she's going to do, that's kind of crazy too. It's like we're like sitting ducks at the end of the day. But I think we're awakening up. I think we're awakening. So the awakening is an awakening of mankind's spirit. Spirit. It's also an awakening for me, moving into and being able to do classical music, orchestrations, and as I build out all of that, like I said, I hope you stay on my radar. I hope I stay on your radar because I have you on my radar for sure. But I hope I stay on your radar so that when I do more music like this, you'll download it, you'll get it, you'll enjoy it. Let me know what you think about The Awakening. I really want to know. What do you think about my first effort in doing that in terms of the classical piece as well as the piece I resolved to the dance funk piece as well? Let me know your thoughts. Go to the website, davidknight.com/theawakening. And it's all good, right? Okay, so I'm going to get out of here. Thank you for spending this time with me. I totally 100% appreciate it. Heck of a whole lot. For those of you who are on YouTube, as they say, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. So as I put this stuff out, I I am so glad I didn't sign off yet. As all of you know, my goal for 2024 is to put out 4 songs. So far, we have done Take It Higher. Move this out the way. So far, we have done Take It Higher. We have done Gentle. And as of now, this month, we have done The Awakening. The 4th song is Abstract, which is a real cool kind of chill dance kind of thing, instrumental once again type of thing. But I'm not going to release that this year. I'm not going to do the 4th song. Why? Because I wrote this new song called Lady of the Sun. Okay? And folks who have tuned in to here now, and folks who are listening to the live stream on Facebook with me, will know this ahead of time. I wrote this song called Lady of the Sun. And Lady of the Sun to me is something different, something new, something unique that I've never done before in terms of songwriting. I think one of the reasons is because I've been looking for my sound as an artist myself, right? And not just an extension of what I have done over the past 40 years as a producer and writer for other artists. So you go back 40 years ago, I was writing and producing for Vicky and for Chase, but Vicky was the lead singer in the band, and so my head was tuned to her voice to write songs for her voice. Fast forward, I began producing for Fonda Rae, so her voice was in my head writing for her. I began producing for who I now call her my cousin, KC, Kim, and songs I wrote for her are in my head. So most of the artists that I wrote for back in those days were females and not for a guy. Now I'm the artist, and that's the whole big thing about my mission. I've gone back to what I originally wanted to be from the 1970s. I want to be the artist, the writer, the artist, putting out the music, the bass player, and I want to be the artist, period. That was my initial goal, right? So now I'm doing it. But what had happened is that when I embarked on doing this in 2017, I was still hearing all I have done for other artists and for female artists in my head. This song, Lady of the Sun, is the first song that I heard my voice, that I heard my vocals on. And this is the first song, and now I have to say, this is the first time in my career that I'm really enjoying my singing, my voice recorded, right? A lot of people don't like that. I didn't like how my voice sounded when it played back to me on tape, me so-called singing. Again, I'm not trained professionally at anything with this. My music purely comes from my heart and soul. I've had bass lessons when I was a kid, and I've had guitar lessons, I had piano lessons, I had drum lessons. I went to college for 2 years and stuff and studied theory and harmony, and I pulled from that. But quite frankly, that's only 20%. The other 80% is what I taught myself as a self-taught musician, songwriter, composer, which is fine to me, as far as I'm concerned. As long as I like it, as long as all of you like it. But Lady of the Sun is the first time, I said that because I'm not a trained singer. I'm not Whitney Houston. I'm not all this trained singing stuff. And I'm more of a Bobby Brown singer, for lack of a better example. I'm more of a Bobby Brown singer than a Luther Vandross singer at the end of the day. And as long as I can get my voice to do what I need to do for the songs that I write, I'm happy. As long as the people, fans are happy and they can deal with it, I'm happy. And if not, I'll work at making that better. Anyway, long story short, Lady of the Sun is the first song that I've written for myself that I can really hear me singing, and I like my voice. Yeah, there's Share a Little Love, for those who remember the podcast episode of my band and stuff. And I'm re-recording Share a Little Love as well, and those songs, and all the songs that I wrote back in those days when I was in my 20s that I wrote for me, but I never did. Okay, the ones I think are good, I'm going to do them over again because now I like my voice. But anyway, let's turn the page. Lady of the Sun. Lady of the Sun. I love the song. I love what I wrote. It's so different. It's so unique for me, and for my voice. But it's a song that is honoring, I don't like this term, but I'm going to use it because what everybody else in the world knows, It's a song that's honoring Black women, African American women, African women, women who are from the African diaspora that spread out over the world. It's about the Black women, Lady of the Sun. The Lady of the Sun gave birth to humanity. And Lady of the Sun, this song is a song to honor her, to honor Black women. And so I've decided to not put out, this is so important to me, I should say. I decided to not put out and to not work on Abstract to get the fourth song out this year. So once The Awakening is out, I have the rest of this year to work on Lady of the Sun, the video, finish the song up, the recording, get it mixed, get everything done with it, and then put it out in February for Black History Month. Okay, so there will be no more releases of music this year. The next release after The Awakening will be Lady of the Sun. And I'm obviously I'm so excited about it. I let go of doing Abstract for this year because I was going to get once The Awakening was done, my next plan was to get Abstract out sometime in between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and that was going to be it for the year. But I'm not doing that. Okay, so yeah, that's it. And so I got some really cool things planned for next year. The goal is to put out 3 songs next year because all this stuff is really, next year is starting it for me. Next year is really starting it, and I'm excited about it. But let me cut it off right there. I don't want to take this any longer than what I already have. All right, so enjoy the rest of your day. Go to the website and get your copy of The Awakening if it so moves you. Get a copy of the Awakening, and I will catch you next episode. All right, so as my grandmother used to say, keep on living. Night out.